Hello everyone, my name's Steven Bambauer. I'm going to be your guest instructor today. Your teacher, Ms. Sabaya, has been gracious enough to let me practice my teaching skills here with you. So today we're going to begin an introduction to graphing quadratic equations. To begin, we are going to recall graphing linear equations. And remember, linear implies that the graph will take the shape of a line. We're going to recall both methods for graphing linear equations. The first, we're going to start with a chart method. So we're going to create a chart. We're going to create x and y values. We're going to plug in values for x. Well, let's start with -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. Remember, you can plug in any value that you choose, but it's a little easier to use some standards. So let's start with the first one. If we take f of -2, it will equal -3 times -2 plus 3. And that gives us 6 plus 3. And that'll end up equaling 9. So we have our first point, -2, 9. Now that you're familiar with solving for the y value, I'll just plug in the remaining. For -1, the y value will be 6. For 0, the y value will be 3. For 1, the y value will be 0. And for 2, the y value will be -3. Now our graph provides us with 5 points on our line, so we can go ahead and plot those. The first is -2, 9. The second is -1, 6. The third is 0, 3. And the fourth is 1, 0. And then we have 2, -3. So we have enough points on our graph to plot our line. And your finished product should look something like this. Let's move on to method 2, which is the y equals mx plus b method. Remember, we're going to plot slope and our y-intercept to graph this linear equation. The m value is our slope, so we have m equals 2. Remember that is rise over run, so it's going to look like a 2 over a 1. And our y-intercept is b, so b equals -5. We can start by plotting that point on our graph. So we have 0, -5 as our y-intercept, and we can plot points using our slope, and that will we'll go up 2 and over to the right 1 for the next point, and we'll do it another time, go up 2 and over right to get a third point. Now we can graph our line again. And it should look something like that. Now that we've refreshed graphing linear equations, we're going to move on and look at graphing quadratic functions, and the method we're going to use is the charting method. Later we'll discuss other shortcuts like the y equals mx plus b method. So to graph the function, we're going to create a chart. We're going to give ourselves x values. We can stick with the same ones, -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. And again, we're going to plug in to our function the x values, so we're going to start with f of -2 equals -2 squared. And then we get a value of 4. Now we can graph f of -1, or solve for f of -1, and we get -1 squared, which ends up being 1. F of 0 will be equal to 0 squared, which is 0. And then we have f of 1, which is equal to 1 squared, again being 1. And then f of 2 is equal to 2 squared, which is 4. So now we have 5 points to plot on our graph. So we can go ahead and do that. We'll start -2, 4. Next we'll do -1, 1. 0, 0, 1, 1, and 2, 4. Okay, we can connect our points. Remember that this is not a line. We are going to connect the points with a curve, so make sure that they're not connected with straight lines. The graph will resemble a U shape, which is called a parabola. Okay, we're going to do a couple more examples. The first one, we've got our chart made. We're going to use the same points, so let's solve for f of -2. And that gives us -2 times -2 squared plus 3, which is -2 times 4 plus 3, which is -8 plus 3. And finally we get -5. Okay, now we're going to solve the remaining y values the same way. I'll give you a chance to do that. Okay, the other y values you should have come up with are 1, 3, 1, and -5. Now we have 5 points to plot on our graph. We can go ahead and do that, starting with -2, -5, -1, 1, 0, 3, 1, 1, and 2, -5. Alright, now we can connect our points. Remember, creating a curve, and we have another parabola facing downwards. In the previous example, our parabola was facing upwards. They can also face down, such as this one, so make sure you keep that in mind when you're graphing your quadratic functions in the future. Okay, on the next example, we are going to solve for our y values, starting with f of -2, which equals -2 squared minus 4, which equals 4 minus 4, and we get 0. Go ahead and solve the remaining y values on your own, and we can check and make sure you got those right. Alright, the y values you should have come up with are -3, -4, -3, and 0. Again, we have 5 points we can plot and graph our quadratic. So the first point we have is -2, 0. We have -1, -3. We have 0, -4. And we have 1, -3. And we have 2, 0. Okay, we can go ahead and connect these points and form our parabola. Okay. Alright, now I'm going to give you a chance to pause the video and solve these problems on your own. Alright, go ahead and take a second to check your answers. These are the y values you should have come up with and what your graphs should basically look like. Okay, real quick, we're going to go over some key components of a parabola. The first is the vertex, which is the highest or lowest point in the graph, which can also be the peak of the graph. The axis of symmetry is a vertical line through the vertex. The graph is symmetrical over this line. And then the maximum and minimum are the greatest or least possible value, and that is the y value of the vertex. So let's identify each of the above terms in the following graph. The vertex is going to be the lowest point on this graph, and it is the point 1, -4. The axis of symmetry, the line that basically bisects the graph, can be found on x equals 1. That will split the graph evenly right down the middle. And then for this graph we have a minimum, which is the lowest point again, and it's the same as our vertex. -4. Okay, let's do another example. We're going to graph this quadratic and complete the missing information. So we have a chart. We're going to start by plugging in our x values. So we'll start with f of -4 equals 3 times -4 squared plus 12 times -4 minus 9. So we'll have 3 times 16 minus 48 minus 9. Okay, then we have 48 minus 9, which leaves us with -9. Okay, go ahead and complete the remaining, solve for the remaining y values, and then we'll move forward. Okay, this graph is actually a little bit large to plot. We're going to actually move on to the next problem. I'm going to have you solve this one on your own, and that is where we will pick up tomorrow. Have a good day.